Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Do you slab build pottery and you want your seams to disappear? Today I'm going to share with you the 5 steps I do every time I slab build to make invisible seams. First up, you have to cut your edges at an angle. Yeah, theoretically you can overlap your edges, but you're never going to get an invisible seam this way. And attaching your edges by just butting them up against one another isn't going to be strong enough to hold. By the way, I am using my free teacup template, which you can have too. It's totally free. I'll link it down below in the description. So you want to cut your edge at a 45-degree angle, flipping halfway in between. Don't forget to flip so that when you put them together, they overlap. Now, I have this handy angle cutter, which I'll also link for you in the description, but you don't actually need this tool at all. Clay is pretty forgiving, so you can just use a knife or a needle tool to cut a more or less 45-degree angle and it should be just fine. So when you're attaching your edges together, you definitely need to score, but beware of using too much slip. Slip adds a lot of moisture to your clay, which can make it sloppy and difficult to work with. Personally, with the clay that I use, like when it's straight out of the bag, I don't add anything. There is enough moisture in the clay already. But if the clay has been drying out for a little while, I will add just a little bit of water. That's enough for my clay. You might need to add water or slip depending on the clay that you use, but with most beginners that I teach, there's a tendency to rather overuse water, which can cause all sorts of trouble. So use water sparingly if you want to have clean and tidy seams. Number 3, okay, when you put your seams together, you want to press them and blend them a little bit to establish a connection, but then let it rest for a minute. This is especially true if you add water or slip. You need to give it a second for the connection to like firm up and strengthen before you fully blend it out. Overworking the clay at this crucial moment can really cause a weakness in your seam. Speaking of improving skills, something that I've really been trying to get better at is taking photographs of my finished pieces. So I've been DIYing it and fumbling my way through for a really long time now, but I found tons of amazing classes on this topic over on Skillshare, which is the sponsor of today's video. Skillshare is the largest online community for creatives with classes led by industry professionals across photography, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can really help you turn your hobby into your hustle or your side gig into your job. I've set a goal for myself this summer to revamp all of the visuals on my website, and learning how to actually take nice pictures is a huge part of that. This one video that Tabitha Park made on lighting is just... So if you want to transform your summertime I want tos into I made it happen, check out the link in the video description. The first 500 people to use my link will receive 1 month totally free of Skillshare. So get started today. Okay, so I've blended it, I've set it aside to rest, and I blended it again. Our seam's looking pretty good, but we can do better. I'm going to fully assemble the rest of my teacup before I get back to you with the next tip. Okay, so step number 4 is patience. Now, I know this is the most excruciating step, but if you watch any of my hand building videos that I have on my other channel, you know that I always let my pots dry out to leather hard before I do any of the final tidying up. This is because your pot is so fragile in its current stage and it will be prone to all sorts of disasters like warping or cracking or, just messing it up. When it is leather hard, it is much stronger to withstand the kind of detail work that is tidying up. Okay, it's the next day. It's like downpouring outside right now, so I hope that the lighting is okay, but it's feeling very cozy in the studio right now. So I've let it dry under this cloth overnight, so it's leather hard. So the plan now is to give it its final tidy and really make that seam disappear. So my last trick is scraping the seam. So here I'll hold this rib at a 90-degree angle, and I like to use this firm mud tools rib for this, but you can use an old credit card or something else. I find that those thicker wooden ribs don't really work for this step. You want something that's like thinner. And then you're just going to scrape the seam. Now you have to be careful because you don't want to scrape off too much clay. You don't want to make the wall too thin here because that wouldn't make your seam very invisible. You just want to scrape off any irregularities or bumps that might give it away that there's a seam here. And then that goes along to the rest of the piece. I like to scrape off the edges. Any weird bumps and bobs here, you can just scrape off and then smooth with your finger. Okay, lastly, I have a little bonus trick for you because maybe you're like me and you might just be a little bit too lazy to do all of these steps to make your seams disappear. I have a sneaky little trick that I actually do on pretty much all of my pottery to hide my seams. I put my handles over the seams. When you put your handles over the seam, you can get away with skipping some of these steps because the handle visually distracts from any irregularities that you might see. It also simply covers a good portion of it. So this is something I pretty much always do, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. So those are all of my little tricks for making seams disappear. Lastly, as always, it needs just a little bit of practice, but I believe in you. I hope that video was helpful for you. If you're interested in this template, I'll have it linked for you down below in the description. And if you're interested in other pottery templates, I have a whole other channel dedicated towards that. I'll link that right here. See you guys in the next video.